Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Earlier, we had a look at some terms of service changes which has happened in War Thunder over the last little period. Now, what I thought we would do is also have a look at the rest of the changes that have happened, basically over the last year or so, a lot of them happening after the previous update. Update Leviathans just came out. Now, I've been chatting to Bruce, who is a guy who posts on the forums, and also somebody that is always enjoyable to kind of chat to, and went through a bunch of these, and I thought we would share them with you today, just so we could get your opinions, and also at the same time, just kind of get it out there. I think stuff like the EULA and also the terms of service are incredibly important to understand, because it's the whole like knowing your rights kind of deal. At the end of the day, there is a lot of rules and stuff which are in there that I feel like people just don't know about. One of the obviously major ones is people cannot create multiple accounts when it comes to Gaijin, but obviously a ton of people do anyway because they just don't enforce the rule. But at the end of the day, it is good to know these types of things. So what we will do is have a look at them and see what's kind of going on with them and the changes that have turned up going forward. So the first large change is kind of the age of consent of the service. So in 2023, the age of consent was 16. What this means is if you were 16 or older, everything kind of fell on your head for what happens to the account and also the ramifications of what went on. If you were under the age of 16, then it was basically down to the parent or the legal guardian to restrict your access to the product, and therefore it would fall on top of their head. So it says you are solely responsible for minors using your credit card or another payment instruction. So basically it's just who kind of is in the shit if something goes wrong with the thing. Now this has actually been changed to 18. So now it says the services are not offered to users under 18 or those who have not reached the age of majority in their jurisdiction. If you are under 18 or have not reached the age of majority in your jurisdiction, you must have the consent of a parent or legal guardian to use the service. By accepting these terms and using the service, you confirm that you are at least 18 years old or have reached the age of majority in your jurisdiction. Gaijin may limit or offer the service to users of different ages based on local legal requirements. If you're a parent or legal guardian, you're responsible for monitoring your account to restrict usage by minors and must deny access to children under 18. You assume full responsibility for any use of the services by minors connected to your account, and you are solely responsible for minors using your credit card and other payment methods, e.g. PayPal and Facebook credits, which is a fantastic thing that's in there, good old Facebook credits. But yeah, so the basic idea is they've just changed the age of consent of War Thunder, which, I don't know, it sounds really funny. They also changed their miscellaneous and dispute resolution part, which is basically what happens if something happens to your account. How does arbitration work? And then also how can you kind of either get it back or what goes on afterwards. So they added 11.5, which is the entire agreement. These terms and conditions, along with any documents or agreements incorporated by reference, including the privacy policy and EULA, constitute the entire agreement between the user and Gaijin regarding the service. They supersede all prior or contemporaneous communications, representations, or agreements, whether electronic, oral, or written, between the user and Gaijin concerning the service. Then there's 11.6, force majeure. Gaijin shall not be held liable for any failure or delay in the performance of its obligations under these terms due to causes beyond its reasonable control, including but not limited to natural disasters, war, terrorism, strikes, power outages, internet service interruptions, or government regulations. 11.7 is waiver. Failure by Gaijin to exercise or enforce any right or provision of these terms shall not constitute a waiver of such right or provision. Any waiver of any provision of these terms shall be effective only if in writing and signed by an authorized representative of Gaijin. And then you have 11.8, no third-party beneficiaries. These terms and conditions are intended solely for the benefit of Gaijin and the user. and are not intended to benefit any third party. No third party shall have any rights to enforce these terms except as expressly stated herein. And then 11.9, survival. Any provisions in these terms or of these terms which by their nature should survive termination, including but not limited to provisions relating to intellectual property, indemnification and limitation of liability, shall remain in effect after the termination or expiration of these terms. And then also you have 12.3.1 for users residing in the European Union or elsewhere, so excluding the US, Canada, and Australia, any dispute, controversy, or claim arising out of the relating to the terms and conditions, including any question regarding its existence, validity, or termination, and any non-contractual claims, shall be referred to and finally resolved by arbitration in accordance with the arbitration rules of the Cyprus Arbitration and Mediation Centre, for the time being in force, which rules are deemed to be incorporated by reference into this clause. The arbitration shall be administered by the Cyprus Arbitration and Mediation Centre, or CAMC. The seat or legal place of arbitration shall be Nicosia, Cyprus. The appointing authority shall be the Board of Directors of the CAMC. The number of arbitrators shall be 1. The language to be used in the arbitral proceeding shall be English, and the governing law of the terms and conditions shall be the substantive law of Cyprus. So you're going to go to Cyprus, buddy, if you've got an issue. 12.5 also, any claims or disputes arising from or in connection with the terms and conditions must be initiated within 1 year from the date the cause of action arose, unless a longer period is required by applicable law. And then also 12.6, all arbitration proceedings shall be confidential, and no information relating to the arbitration, including the final award, shall be disclosed to third parties without the prior written consent of both parties, except as required by law. So basically, they're just covering themselves, which any company does. And as companies go on and as laws change of different areas, everything just becomes a little bit more technical. So all of these here are just basically covering their ass, which, as I said, it's pretty standard. One of the more interesting additions that came in over the last few years was to their license limitations. Basically, they had 3.2.1, which is no transfer, and it's sell, rent, lend, sublicense, publish, distribute, transfer, or otherwise transfer the game or a copy thereof in a whole or in part to any third party. But then they added, unless otherwise required by law as a mandatory provision. Because the thing about it is you have certain areas of the world which just will not let you actually, work in them unless you have a partner there. China is one of these, and then obviously you have War Thunder DMM as well, so it would have been a little bit weird if that wasn't the case. Another thing to also mention is they basically added a VR section to the terms of service. This is basically just once again covering themselves. I don't really want to go through it because it's basically just saying, look, if anything happens to your VR device or if anything happens to you because of the VR device, it isn't our fault. And, that's obviously fine. Like, they literally say stuff like, you acknowledge that prolonged use of VR may lead to a range of adverse symptoms, including but not limited to motion sickness, visual issues, neurological symptoms, muscular strain. So yeah, it's just all about making sure that they cannot be blamed because you are using VR and using it with their product. They also added in that Gaijin may employ various technical measures such as digital rights management tools, and also by using the game, you acknowledge and agree to the use of such technical measures as necessary for these purposes. So basically, if they decide to add in additional stuff like additional tools or software, you will also agree to using those. So basically, this is like the easy anti-cheat stuff, for example, or the battle eye system that they brought in. Basically, the anti-cheat things, or just DRM in general, which isn't great, but c'est la vie. That's basically how this stuff goes all the time. The other thing that they also added in is basically the English version of the ToS is the true ToS. So if there are any other kind of versions of the ToS in other languages, the interpretation, validity, or form goes to the English one, and that's the one that prevails. So therefore, people can't swindle out of things by translating it and showing it says something different, which I find, once again, kind of funny that that has to be said. But We live in fun times where legalese has to be done. There is also now a line for activity as well, 3.11. If a user's account has been inactive for 3 or more years, Gaijin may delete the account, provided prior notice is sent to the email associated with the account. Upon deletion, all Gaijin coin, skins, and other in-game items will be permanently lost and cannot be restored. So basically, if somebody has an inactive account, meaning that they just haven't logged into it for 3 years, Gaijin can just yeet it and get rid of it. And obviously, you know, this is because there's a lot of dead accounts which have been sat around the place for a long time, and they just probably want to start cleaning them up because that takes server space, and also at the same time it takes names and it takes other stuff that you can never get kind of going forward. It is kind of sad though, because once again it's erasing history, but at the same time 99.999% of these players are not going to come back to the game. The accounts themselves are dead weight and they're not really going to do much. But it does also mean if you're a person who do take long breaks from the game, aka years at a time, it may be worth logging in every once in a while just to make sure that you don't get your account lost. They also added a clarification to some of the game rules, basically the fair play stuff when it comes to what you can actually be kind of banned for under the unsportsmanlike conduct idea. So it says you must play fairly and not intentionally disrupt your team's gameplay. This includes not injuring teammates on purpose, i.e. friendly fire, blocking their movements, or remaining inactive or AFK during a game. You must also avoid using cheats, bugs, exploits, or other unfair methods of play. So basically now you can get properly punished for being away from keyboard if you load into a game. And obviously I don't think this is going to affect people who just do it once. I think this is to try and go after people who are literally botting and doing stuff like that. So you load into a game, you don't do anything, and then, you know, you just do that over and over and over again. So don't worry if, like, you have one game where, I don't know, you have to go to an emergency or have to do something like that. This is not really targeted at that. It's once again just making sure that when they get rid of somebody who is doing it intentionally every single game, or at least a lot of games, then they're able to do it. So as you can see, over the last few years, they've done a lot of updates to the terms of service. Usually, it's just about stuff which is happening at the time. So as we said, like the VR stuff or age of consent stuff. This is usually based on policies when it comes to certain unions or certain governments. So they kind of added in there. But some stuff is looking towards the future, whether it be the way that they deal with unsportsmanlike conduct or whether it's the subscription stuff that we talked about in an earlier video. So it's always good to keep up with these things. The terms of service are something that I feel like everybody should read when they go into using a product. Does that actually happen? No. Most people don't read these things, but I think it's important to do so because of the simple fact that you need to know what the rules are of the product that you're using. So make sure to get involved, make sure to read through it. It's super important to understand the ULA and also the terms of service. There are so many things in there that I feel like I hear on a daily basis people saying that certain things are fine that you can do in the game, like the whole multiple accounts thing, but it just isn't. And you just need to make sure to protect your account. It's now that War Thunder is over a decade old. I know a lot of people who have some pretty old accounts, including mine, and I know it would be a big loss to them if they lost it. So understanding the rules that you have to live by is incredibly important. As always, let me know your thoughts on some of these updates. Look after yourselves. Peace be with you. I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.